Okay, so thanks for the introduction, Arby. We'll get straight into it then. So, just going to be going through how to take a slightly different approach to what you should be ranking for, keyword research, and generally how we think about keyword targeting. And I think in general, SEOs on the whole think a bit too much about keywords and not enough about how the users are using the site, what questions they've got, and really that's the next big step for us. Okay, so that's difficult. This is why I do not use a Mac. Okay, so this is what we're going to go through today. 3 points. So first, what's the big difference between head and long tail terms, and which of those should you rank for? Then I'm going to go into a bit more detail on if you should rank for the merchant brand term, what value this has, what challenges you face with it. And then finally, the big question, does content marketing really work? The reason that one's in there is I think content marketing is perhaps the most hyped thing in SEO at the moment, especially the last couple of years. It's all been content is king. And for a lot of people, they've not really seen the returns from it that they should. A few reasons for this, and we'll go into those in a little bit of time. Okay, so before we get started, this diagram just shows all of the search terms out of our webmaster tools for Crazy Book. And the size of the words just is the amount of search traffic that we've got for that term. So as you can see there, 100-ish terms, maybe a little bit more. In reality, that's less than 1% of the search terms that Crazy Book has. We have in excess of 10,000 right now. So, quick question. How many of these terms up here do you think that we actually chose to target?
83.
You were very quick at reading when I flick. Yep. It's close enough. Yep. So yeah, we only actually track 81 of the keywords. So in excess of 10,000, but we only chose 81 of those. And the main reason for this is all the long tail variations that exist. So really, we've got to start to think a bit more beyond what keywords we're tracking and how we start to capture those long tail searches. Okay, so don't want to patronize anyone, so I'm going to go through this really quick. Just a very quick, what's the difference between head and long tail? Okay, so head search terms, less specific, broader in nature, relatively high volume on the whole, compared to long tail, which are a lot more specific in nature, answer a question quite directly. You know that it's actually user intention, and it comes down to that really, that they're very specific, and you know exactly what a user wants. So compare bodybuilding to bodybuilding supplements, alternatives to HGH. You can tell the head compared to the long tail. Okay, so one little thing hidden away in this image. It might be me being a little bit pedantic, but what's wrong with this image? This is kind of the traditional head and long tail graph that everybody shows off. Anybody? It's probably me being pedantic, so we'll go into it. Okay, so long tail and head keywords are not determined by the length. It's actually how specific a term is. So you see that it says 70% comes from long tail keywords, highly specific 4 to 6 word phrases. That really isn't the case. If I give you an example, HGH, what, 40, 50,000 searches a month, and then you compare that to a term of the same length, HGHX2, you're talking 100, 200 searches. So it's still a one-word search term, but it's long tail, simply because it's more specific and there isn't much search volume behind it. And that's kind of one of the key things that start to think about, is that big difference between head and long tail is that specificity of the terms. Just to put that into a bit more context, once again stealing a bit of data from Crazy Book, it's probably hard to see from there, but what I did is did a quick character count on every single search term, totaled up the volume of search traffic for every single character length, and then grouped it like this. So the big grey box is roughly half of our traffic comes from search terms that are between 11 and 15 characters. This could be something like legal steroids, it's a great example. And then if you compare that to the blue box here, that's about 5% of search traffic, and that's 0 to 5 characters. So that's shorter. Traditionally, you think potentially more traffic. but in reality it's a lot less, and that's terms like HGH and much shorter terms like that. So really, the point I'm trying to get to really is when it comes to search terms, size does not matter at all. It makes no difference. It's more a case of selecting terms based on how users are behaving. Okay, so why should you actually care about this? Well, the main reason is that a lot of people shy away from long tail search terms. And there's a few reasons for this, and yeah, I think most people are quite justified in doing it because it takes a slightly different approach and there's not many useful tools out there for targeting long tail search. So first things first, generic content marketing can be hard work. It does take a big investment when you're getting started. You could be talking minimum 1-2 blog posts a week, all the way up to, well, as many as you can publish daily, preferably. And that's potentially a big resource investment, big time investment. The big thing that's also kind of holds content marketing back is a lot of the strategies online focus around all these long tail terms and don't think about, okay, I'm building up these long tail terms, how can I then take those long tail rankings and start to build on my head term rankings as well? And that's something that's really commonly forgotten is that, yeah, I've got all these great little blog posts, but then how do I start to interlink them so that I'm building up my bigger terms rankings? Also, previously, it was very difficult to rank for multiple long tail terms on a single page. So if we're talking pre-Hummingbird, vast majority of SEOs tended to focus one keyword, one page, to the extent that, to some extent anyway, the strategy of even like legal steroid and legal steroids having two separate pages even existed back in 2013. It was starting to die out a couple of years before, but people were still doing it. Now, hundreds of keywords can rank the page. So, a few more examples from Crazy Bulk. Homepage ranks for 830 keywords, and about half of Crazy Bulk's homepage traffic comes from the brand term. That's it. The vast majority of the rest is things like legal steroids, steroid alternatives, legal anabolics, other terms and variations like that. Okay, so finally, most keyword tools, this is kind of where you're all really held back by the resources that are out there right now. So keyword tool, really easy to go to Ahrefs, put in a term, look at the traffic, explore related terms, and what's the first thing you do? Hit the column to order it by traffic. So you look at biggest to smallest term, and naturally you want to target something close to the top with relatively low competition. Very easy to fall into that general mindset of, okay, let's look for the biggest possible term with the lowest competition, but it's not always that simple. There is another layer to it where you've got to start to think, okay, yes, you've got this one keyword, but how many other keywords then surround that? What other related searches can you start to target? Okay, so let's go into an actual practical example, and this is one that we discovered recently in-house. So, very simple process. First step is we use a bunch of different keyword research methods, and we just come up with a long list of seed keywords. And what I mean by seed keyword is seed keywords are a starting point, so it might be almost like the header of your article. And from that, you're then going to have a lot of related terms. So if you've got an article on HGH, you might have HGH side effects, history, athletes that have had problems from using it or abusing it, all sorts of different headers in there, which answer different queries. Once you've got those seed keywords, you then expand it out on them. So you take that keyword and one keyword all of a sudden becomes 100, 200, potentially thousands, depending on how far you go with it. And then finally, you filter that list back down, make it a little bit more relevant, and start to really group all of those keywords into something that you can apply to some content marketing. So you go from, I'd say by this point, you could be less than 100 keywords, and you're targeting 4, 5, 6 articles at that point. Okay, first step. So how do you actually get to the point that you've got some seed keywords? Now, there's a few methods you can use. The kind of obvious traditional ones are all the tools out there that people probably use day in, day out. So that could be SEO Mars, Ahrefs, Google Keyword Planner, anything really. There are so many keyword discovery tools out there that you can use that really it's down to personal preference, and they all give very similar sort of results. Second one, a little bit more interesting, competitor analysis. Great starting point if you haven't got a very well established site is looking at what your competitors are doing. So as Martin spoke to you about earlier, you can see a lot of information about your competitors in Ahrefs. One of the most useful things for me is just looking straight at top keywords. And as soon as you can do that, you can actually start to group those a little bit and think about it in a little bit more depth of, okay, this is a general theme of the site, this is what works and this is what doesn't. Don't just focus on keywords blindly, think about the content and what the users are going to that site for. And finally, this is a little bit more of an advanced one, and this is what we've started doing recently. Not many of you will be aware, but recently we've had a PPC specialist start in-house, George, and he started running a variety of different PPC campaigns. What this has allowed us to do is start harvesting a lot of data that we haven't had before. So if you're bidding for around position 4 or 5 in paid listings, then you're not going to get many clicks, but you get a lot of impression data. So you could be paying less than £10 a day and come out with a list of hundreds and hundreds of search terms and impression data that you wouldn't get access to normally. If you take that impression data, you can then manipulate it a little bit, and you come out with a list of potential keywords that are really low competition but high search volume, and it's proven to be really useful so far. So we start to use that to build up some of our rankings now. Okay, so very quick example of this second step. Image quality is a little bit poor, so the presentation will be available afterwards as well for you all to see, but this is looking at anabolic men. I believe this is one of the examples Martin's used as well, and they're just a competitor website that's a mixture between steroids and testosterone. And what you'll see here is that a few terms pop up a few times, so testosterone boosting, it's probably easy for me to read off my screen, specific brands, and then testosterone. Also things such as legal steroids and natural steroids, a whole variety of terms, but it primarily focuses around two things, which are steroids and testosterone, which then starts to form some seed keywords that you have to play with, and you can start to then go on and actually expand on those original seed keywords. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. This is where you have to start your spreadsheet really and start thinking about how you're going to work with all this data, because you will end up with hundreds and hundreds of terms. The most important things to record are just your keywords and their search volume. Nice to have competition as well. Not the end of the world, because you're tending here to be looking at more long tail search, and the vast majority of them are low competition anyway, so it's a bit too much of a fuss to look at 500 search terms competitions to try and decide which one you're going to target. Okay, so easiest option, once again, Ahrefs. It sounds like this is the Ahrefs conference right now. Ooh, thank you, Rachel. There we go. Okay, so, yep, easiest option to use in Ahrefs. All you'd have to do is, if you go to the keyword discovery tool, put in your seed keyword, and then straight away there's a section which has related keywords, also ranked for, and keyword suggestions. All of those have got a view report button, and you should be able to download at least 100 search terms for each one. So that gives you at least 300 terms to be playing with, and throw them straight into the spreadsheet. It's got all your data straight away about the volume, so all you need is right there, and your keyword research is roughly done in 5 minutes. If you don't have Ahrefs, Google Trends is a nice way of doing it as well. How many of you actually use Google Trends? Yeah. Okay, so Google Trends is more of a general search comparison tool and generally seeing what's happening and where people are searching for things, but it does have some other useful features in there. One of those is if you put a term in, it will show you suggested related searches and also rising queries. So rising ones are great for discovering things like new brands, new competitors that are out there, so you can start to jump on reviews for competitors, whereas the top terms is great for just starting to branch out and find other related terms. The only problem with this method is that you then have to take those terms, go back and pull out your volume again. So it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more time. Answerthepublic.com. So I'm guessing no one will have used this because it's something I only discovered recently, and I I've never heard it mentioned since. But what it does is it kind of manipulates Google suggested search. So it'll take Google search suggestions and it will put in prefixes, tag suffixes onto the end, and then it'll see how the results change. It'll even go to the extent of doing something like legal steroids A and see what all the suggestions for A are, then legal steroids B, and it'll just pull them all out. You can either have it as a massive, huge diagram, or more useful is just a long list that you then export and once again find your actual search volumes on it. And final one is the old-fashioned way. Type it into Google, see what else comes up. Which really is as simple as that. The biggest limitation you're going to have there is that it takes time. So you're going to have to manually go through, but it does give you a better idea of, okay, people are searching for this. Branch out again as you go deeper and deeper into your search queries. So let's see that in practice. Okay, so this is just an example from our How to Build Muscle. I followed this process and we came up with a list of several hundred keywords. I think I had 400 odd to start with. This list has been tidied up a little bit, so this is what it'll look like a bit later on. But really, it was very little work to get to this point. 10 minutes, I had a nice list that I could use and start to think about how I can create content ideas from this. Okay, so now it's down to the nitty-gritty of it and actually taking all those keyword ideas and, well, turn it into content, really. So what have we got to do next? First things first, filter out the rubbish. There is a lot of rubbish when you do this process. Expect to delete a quarter up to a half of the terms you've got. So how to build muscle, probably the obvious rubbish one was how to build a muscle car. Yep, clearly not related, so that was straight in the bin. Hundreds more like that, where, yeah, it's got the right words in there, but not the right user intent. So it's a slow, painful, probably the most painful part of the process is this step, where you're taking all those terms and deciding what's relevant, what's not. Having to do a little bit of research to see if they're competitors, what each term actually is, because there's a lot of weird and wonderful little brands out there as well. And then you've got a nice clean list. Take that list and start to group it. Make something a bit more useful. If you're down to less than 50 terms at this point, what I tend to do is just quickly write them out on several pieces of paper, put them on a desk and start moving them around. It's much easier once you can actually got them physically on the desk to move them around and start trying to group them than trying to do it on spreadsheets or anything else. It's slightly old school, but it works. And then finally, once you've got your big master article, the one that's got the probably about half of your keywords in there, you're also going to have several little satellite articles around it. And the reason for that is that you want to start trying to, well, some keywords won't be related enough. So legal steroids, yeah, that's quite an easy one to go with. So if you've got other articles related to steroid abuse in athletes and things like that, where it's not specifically talking about legal steroids, but it's in the same general theme, then you probably separate them out into two different pieces. And the kind of value that you get from that is you've got one big article then supported by lots of little articles. Any links that those little articles gain in are then adding value back to your master article, as long as you're not reciprocal linking. That's kind of the big thing. You don't want to be your master article linking to your satellite ones and then back again, otherwise it's adding no value. You're trying to pass the links back up to your bigger articles, which goes a little bit against kind of the more traditional tree structure that you have in a lot of websites. Start to think about that cross-linking and how you can build links back into your most important keywords. Okay, that was a nice easy example, my one. So, main article, clearly going to be how to build muscle, and then a few other topics came up. How to build muscle whilst losing fat. Yep, interesting, but probably not something that most people would look at. Then, how to build muscle on a vegan diet. Yep. Again, another interesting one, but I didn't really want a master article that was 10,000 words long that explained how to build muscle on every single diet. And then how to build protein, how much protein to build muscle rather, as a calculator. So completely different content idea. You're not writing an article, you're building a tool, but it's something that could potentially add more value than anything else combined. A tool like this could get hundreds of links if you've got a nice prominent link from that tool back to your article, then you're going to pass a lot of that link juice across, and you will see the benefits of it. It's just a case of not trying to abuse that. So you don't build one tool and link it to 20 pages because you want all those pages to rank. Just link it to the most relevant thing that you've got available. And finally, how to build muscle, a guide for women. Not as much search volume behind it. It's primarily a male-dominated industry, so it'll make a nice separate article. And it'd potentially get picked up as well by a few of the female bodybuilding sites and get some nice links. That's why I chose to separate that one out. Okay, so here are the search terms that relate to that. Now, there's a lot more. These are just some examples. So when I looked at how to build muscle, the term itself has got 8,900 monthly searches, something around that. Once added in all the related keywords, it had just gone over 24,000. So you almost tripled the amount of potential searches as long as you're considering all your keyword variations in there. So if you have a little look at these, you'll start to spot that some of them would potentially make quite good headings for your article. So this then starts to influence how you work with your writer as well. You can actually start to pull out the ones that are clear headers, things like, where is it? How to build muscle without weights, and how to build muscle mass. It's kind of obvious ones that jump out that potentially good headers make sections of your content. Some terms are even better for this way. You just look at it and straight away you think, yeah, okay, this is pretty much writing my article for me. So I'll send an article title and several subheaders over to a writer, and off they go. The other thing that you can do with these terms is if you group them all together and send them all over to your writer, you give them a good idea of other terms that you want to include in there. So, yeah, you might not want to have how to build lean muscle, how to build muscle mass fast, all repeated throughout. Might look a little bit spammy. But if you start to mix in words like lean, fast, and any other variations that you've got, then you've got a good chance for ranking for those as well. We're not really looking at complete exact match searches anymore. Google's got a lot better at understanding kind of search intent, and that's kind of where Hummingbird comes in and how it's made a big difference, is that as long as your page roughly answers what the user's looking for, you will rank for it. Even if you've not got the word anywhere in there, you can still rank for it. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of these little satellite articles as well. So if we think about that master article, I'd probably aim somewhere in the region of about 4,000 words, and that's really, really rule of thumb. The main thing with content length here is length of content doesn't matter. What matters is that you answer a user's question fully. If someone reads your article and has to go away to explore it further, then you've failed them. So answer that user's question fully. Think of everything that they need. Make sure they don't have to go back to search results. And that's all that matters. If you can do it in 1,000 words, so be it. Great on you. You will rank first. Even if the competitor's got 8,000 words, you'll outrank them because you'll have better engagement stats. And Google will use those engagement stats. They know how long people stay on your site. The vast majority of people have analytics. They've got all the data about how often people bounce back to search results. So they will use that information. So yeah, engagement is the key there. But 4,000 words, nice rule of thumb. The smaller articles, about 1,000 words should do it. You're just thinking traditional blog posts, nothing too special. If you look at the search volume, they're not worth investing too much time and money into. Well, if you look at that example that's up at the moment, there's probably about 1,000 monthly searches for it. So it's not going to make you rich overnight. Have enough of them, it'll definitely bring some money in because they're all quite highly relevant and targeted. But yeah, make sure that you're being conservative with how you build your content as well. Okay, so here are the terms that are behind building muscle as a vegan. Now, the one that jumps out here and surprised me is vegan gains, and all this is a bodybuilder who's become very well known for being a vegan and his success at building muscle as a vegan. So really, this article might take a slightly different angle and think more about the athlete themselves and talk about how he's had success and target the surrounding keywords that way, try and piggyback off this, 27,000 searches a month. So slightly different ways, approaching that one where you're not going directly for the keyword, but you're going for the things around it. Okay, so the calculator term, about 2,000 monthly searches there. Still makes it worth building. If you're getting even 10% of those using it, that's 200 people potentially using it, and that's potentially a lot more leads that could generate. You could have it, force it to the after enter an email address, start to harvest some email addresses through it, play around, experiment, and see what works for you, really. And the final one, just quickly, once again, about 1,000 monthly searches. And that's all I think you need for a small article, is that as long as you've got in the ballpark of 1,000 searches, it's worth creating. And you can start to use that to build up your bigger article for your head term. Okay, so I've rambled on for a little while about content marketing. You can probably clearly tell that I'm a fan of it. But what about the brand terms? Now, I'm guessing a lot of you will make money already through brand terms, and yep, they're still important. There's no line about that. They're not going away. The big thing with branded terms is that they're a clear winner, so everyone's doing it. So if you're targeting just branded terms, then you're in a very competitive market. You're competing against every other affiliate in the room probably, and a lot more. The main thing is that when it comes to branded terms, even then you should try and branch out a little bit and catch people at every single step. So you've got things like when they're comparing products early on, or when they're at that point of making a purchase decision, looking for reviews, making sure that the company is legit, all of those things, every single step you want to be trying to bring those people back to your site and once again generate clicks through to the merchant. Brand terms, coming back to that point again, competition is high. Don't rely on brand terms alone. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking just about branded terms because they always will convert. But if you think about some of the smaller brands and you're setting up a new site, there won't be much branded search behind it, and a lot of these sites have got to start somewhere and build out. If you start with content marketing, eventually you'll start to establish your branded rankings as well. You'll start to build up the trust and authority behind your site, and you'll be able to target those terms. So don't jump in straight away just thinking about brand. Start with your content and build up from that point. Okay, so does content marketing really work? This is a little bit of a disclaimer to everything that I've just said. So content marketing is part of SEO, it's not the whole story. There's a lot more that has to go on. If you're just doing content marketing and expecting to get rich, then you may as well not bother, because there's a lot more that you have to do every single day to make a website rank and make it perform well. Multiple SEO activities, as well as things beyond SEO, really help reduce that risk. You're thinking about things like what your competition doing. Is someone doing negative SEO on your house? Could that potentially impact you? Are you going to set up other smaller sites around it so that even if you lose a big site, you've got something else supporting your income? And it always is about diversifying and having as wide a base as possible. And also, the big thing, if you're looking for sustainable growth, there's only so far you can go with head terms. You've 30% of search is head, so that's 70% left over that you've got in your long tail search. That's a lot of the market that you're potentially missing out on if you completely ignore that it exists. And with the capability of ranking for multiple keywords per page, it's quite easy now to grab a huge bunch of those terms. And it can be a case that it is overnight as well. So if I look at a long tail term, you can find that you can rank for it within a matter of 2-3 days. You look at some of the more competitive terms, say a heavy competition branded term like Crazy Bolt, then you're doing well if you're ranking within 6 to 12 months for like Crazy Bolt Review or something along those lines. The main thing is then you're starting to get that real balance of, okay, I've got these long tail keywords, they're going to bring me some money in tomorrow. I've got all these big head terms, and hopefully those bring my money in 6, 12, 18 months down the line. And think about it in that way where, okay, yeah, what am I going to do that's going to make me money tomorrow? What am I going to do that's going to make me money next year? And always build it up slowly and progressively over time. But yep, ultimate answer is, yep, content marketing works as long as you do it right and as long as you're patient with it. It isn't going to be one of those things that you'll do it for a week and realise that all of a sudden your sales have jumped up. If you do it for 3 months and you don't start to see your sales improving, then you've probably taken a slightly wrong approach to it. And it's all about thinking about your long tail and your head terms that you're going to build up over time. Okay, one final little thing that I wanted to share is generally a little bit of a different approach to how we think about ourselves as SEOs. There's this very traditional thing about, okay, you're a black hat SEO, you're a white hat SEO, and people don't really tend to cross those boundaries. They either want to do things completely to Google's guidelines or break every rule in the book and see how long the site can last. Really, if you do it right now, you can think about things a little bit differently, and you can take a measured amount of risk. As you can see here, as say 20% of your time probably spend it in doing more risky activities. So that could be some form of link building that's a little bit grey, say private blog network, something like that, and build up some terms that are potentially good money makers, but they're not the terms that if you lose them you're going to all of a sudden be making no money. These are the terms that, yeah, they're good, but they're medium risk. You could afford to lose them. Then 30% of your time, spend it on the stuff that you want to. It's kind of your dream goals. Those, I want to rank for legal steroids because it's huge, and do it slowly. Do it in a way that you know that you'll never get penalised for it. And then the remaining half of your time, invest it into content marketing. It just supports the rest of everything else that you're doing. And what it will mean is that you're building up these bigger terms, but you're doing it through building links from your articles back to them and actually making it a lot easier for them to attract links, especially when your content's quite sales driven and can seem a little bit pushy in some respects. It's very hard to get natural links to them. It's a lot easier to get links to these more natural looking articles that have more gentle sales prompts in them. Okay, so what should you be doing next? The main thing is generate your content marketing ideas using the seed keyword strategy. So slides are available. Just walk through it step by step, and it shouldn't take you more than half an hour really to have a good idea of what direction you want to go in. Then start to set some long-term goals for branded terms, ones that you're not ranking for. So this could be big hitters or other variations, looking into things like specific products or anything else really. And then finally, balance your short and long-term rewards. Yep, we all want to rank number one for our big terms that make 100k a month, but it's not viable. So think about what you can do that will make money tomorrow, and then work slowly towards those bigger terms. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.